Serious teachers of Reddit, what is the most disturbing thing your student has ever done? Was teaching 7th grade in what we call in Germany gymnasium, something like high school, and it was the second week of the year. I noticed some kind of stress in him, and then at one point he erupted. Threw his pencil case against the blackboard, yelled, "Everything is shite. Everything." Stood up, climbed on the desk, pulled out his penis, and peed while crying. The whole class including me was just shocked. I would like to prevent this situation, but it just escalated so quickly, and when it was happening it was so surreal I was paralyzed. After what felt like 100 years I just grabbed him, threw him over my shoulder, and walked out of the classroom. Held him by his hand, while shouting into the classroom that they should stay in the classroom while I'm away and only leave it for the next class. I went to call his parents. He got picked up and never came back to this school. I don't know what happened to him. Back when I was a teacher, one of my students randomly started punching another kid, his friend, in the middle of class. No provocation whatsoever. The puncher was into bodybuilding and pretty in shape, and he had never been violent before in school, so this was both surprising and hard to break up considering his size. He broke his friend's nose and was smiling after. Had no idea what he did was weird or upsetting. Tried to jump out of a 3rd floor window just because. I was utterly terrified. I taught 3rd graders for a year, so the kids were around 9 years old. It was a couple of days before summer holidays and I asked the kids what they were going to do during summer. I got to this one girl and asked her what she was going to do, and she happily announced she was going to Germany with her sister and parents. I asked her what she was going to do in Germany, and she said she was going to ask people if they have €1. I was like, what? And she proceeded to sit down on the floor with a really sad look on her face, stuck her hand out to me and said, "See, like this. Please miss, do you have just €1? I'm hungry." She didn't really see anything wrong with this. I'm pretty sure she didn't really understand what she was doing. I was quite alarmed by this, so I informed the other school staff. It turned out that, even though they weren't actually poor, her parents were regularly taking their 2 daughters to Germany over summer, where they would make them beg for money in the streets. I heard the girl and her sister got pulled out of school shortly after that, but I don't know what happened after, since I don't work there anymore. At the first school that I taught at, I had a girl come up to me one day and say, "Robert has a knife." I pulled Robert into the hallway to talk with him about it. He said that he didn't have a knife, but did have a box cutter. I asked him why he had it and he said, "Because I'm tired of Chris." Chris was an annoying suck up, but wasn't really bad or mean to other kids. I asked Robert what he was planning on doing to Chris. He said, "I'm going to get him in the bathroom." I usually took the class to the restroom after lunch, but I didn't that day because they were being rowdy in the hallway. I took Robert to the office, and after hearing the story the principal chewed him out. She then called Robert's mom, and she chewed him out on the phone. Here's the kicker. Robert knew that he was in serious trouble. He knew that what he was planning was wrong. He just didn't care. Not in a false bravado macho type was. He literally didn't care. I hate to predict a kid's future criminal endeavors, but that kid scares me. By the way, Robert was 8 years old at the time. I was a preschool teacher at the time. I was doing group time, singing songs, reading a book, and all the kids were sitting on the floor. One left to blow her nose. She came back, walked through the crowd of kids to get back to her spot, grabbed a quiet girl's hair, and kept walking. My assistant thought it was a mistake, but the girl kept walking. She even bent at the knees and yanked while the poor long-haired girl screamed. That girl had no remorse and would be so unpredictable. She would look in your eyes, but right through them. It was a stressful year. Recently had one of my students tell a pregnant teacher that he wanted to punch her in the stomach. Another student said, "You can't do that. She's pregnant." The first student then said, "That's the point. These are 5th graders. This is also in a school that rarely has behavior problems, so this was quite a shock." I caught some kid trying to take inappropriate photos of his lady friends in the class. When I noticed him doing something fishy, he was directly aiming the camera to where the female students were sitting. I told him to hand over the phone, and he got visibly uncomfortable but complied. I handed it over to his form tutor, who was a lady, and explained the situation. I figured if there were any photos of female students it wouldn't be okay for me to see it. First sweep through his documents didn't reveal anything, but luckily I thought of suggesting her to check the hidden category, and I'm told everything was in there. School took disciplinary action as a result. I always mention this one, because it was literally my first day teaching ever, but a kid in my class carved a girl's name into his leg and bled everywhere. That same class a month later I had a kid steal my wallet and then later come give it back to me when I was alone in a hall after school. When he gave it back to me, he calmly told me I should be aware of what he could do to me since he was able to easily steal from me without me noticing. I actually never reported him for that, but soon after his parents pulled him out of our school because they thought we were too liberal and filling their godly son with bad ideas, so yeah. I had a 5th grader who I swore was sociopathic. His father had deported the boy's mother because he wanted a new wife. If that gives some context to the living situation. The boy would say very aggressive sexual things, moon students on the bus, etc. But the predatory behavior was the worst. He'd wait as students left the room so he could be next to last, turn off the light and backhand the last kid in line. Often his own cousin, who was his most common victim. I had to keep an eye on him constantly. He'd also steal electronics and things from his friends, or force his cousin to do so in case they were caught. P.S. Yes, CPS was involved. This was almost a decade ago, so I'm not sure what happened to him. I was a teaching assistant for an EBD school. Had one of the students try to stab me in the throat with a knife repeatedly during class. No one gave a shit, so I quit and moved on. Middle school English teacher. I had a student pull a tooth out of his own head to get out of silent reading. It was a baby tooth, thank God, but according to mom it was not loose. He just sat at his desk and grabbed it and yanked it back and forth and popped it out and came up to the desk bleeding all over himself and said he wasn't able to read anymore, so could he just put his head down. He was sent to the nurse and mom was horrified. Happily ate half a box of tissue with a smile and offered some to fellow students. This student is not in special ed and is far ahead of his class. The student could finish high school at 15 if his parents wanted, allowed him. Admin has tried. I work at a girls' middle school in a very rough neighborhood. My students often decide to gang up on specific girls from other grades. My 7th graders broke a girl's leg, another girl's arm at some point during the year. A girl tried to stab another teacher in the eye with a sharpened pencil, went to the trash can specifically to sharpen her pencil before running towards her teacher. I have a student that bleeds every week because she likes stabbing herself with pen/pencil/staple/pins, so that class isn't allowed to have things pinned or stapled on the corkboards anymore. I've had random moments during class where girls will just start punching each other and I'll have to get in between. I've only been teaching for a year and I'm already very exhausted. I work with children with autism, so I'm pretty used to children being aggressive and engaging in, sometimes extreme, problem behavior, but one client really caught me off guard. This kid was so flexible that he would sit on his bottom and his feet would raise in front of him, and they would get tucked behind his back, while remaining sitting like it was nothing. His feet were also like a second set of hands. Before I knew this, I was sitting near him getting ready for our next segment and he pulled my hair from behind with his foot while sitting next to me. I still literally cannot fathom how his leg bended that way. Every day with this client was a learning experience for sure. Few years back I taught 2nd grade. An 8-year-old boy would always bring little treats for me in the morning, like candy, a cookie, or even these tiny animal toys. This one morning he came to my desk and told me he had a gift for me. He opened his bag and pulled out a big brassiere and gave it to me. I was speechless, took it and put it in a drawer and just said thank you. Called in his mom and told her about this. Kid never gave me gifts again. Thank you for watching Internet's Funniest. Please like, share, and subscribe.